My ex-wife betrayed me with my golden child brother and even had his baby, while my family, who always treated me like the black sheep, turned a blind eye. They all cut me off like I was disposable. But now that I've been promoted and making more money than all of them combined, they suddenly remember I exist, begging for help, acting like nothing ever happened. I'm 29 years old. Just 2 months ago, I signed the final divorce papers ending my 2-year marriage. My ex-wife was 27, and for months she'd been secretly involved with my estranged brother, also 27. I only figured it out 4 months ago when she dropped the bombshell that she was pregnant. At first, she insisted I was the father. She said the timing lined up perfectly and even showed me ultrasound photos she'd taken at home to convince me. But nothing felt right. My brother, who I hadn't spoken to in years, started showing up unannounced almost every day. He'd help with yard work, bring lunch, and linger long after he should have left. Those constant visits made me uneasy. One sleepless night, I quietly unlocked her phone and scrolled through her messages. The texts were clear. They'd been together for months, and they planned to keep it secret until after the baby arrived. My strained relationship with my family goes back to when I was 18. Growing up, my parents always treated me like the awkward middle child, while my brother was the golden boy who could do no wrong. At my high school graduation, I remember sitting alone on the bleachers while they showered him with praise in the front row. When I earned my college acceptance letter, I was over the moon, but their reaction broke me. Instead of throwing a party for me, they surprised my brother with his own celebration, telling me they didn't want him to feel outshined. In that moment, I realized I was an afterthought. Humiliated and angry, I packed my bags. I financed my education with student loans and part-time work, moved into a small dorm room that doubled as my bedroom and study, and vowed I'd never look back. For almost a decade, I went no contact. My parents never reached out, and I didn't miss them, or so I told myself. Then, out of the blue last year, my brother pinged me online. He claimed our parents were heartbroken and wanted to reconcile. By then, I had been married for 2 years and was living a stable life with my wife. But those old wounds reopened. After days of agonizing over whether to forgive, during which I skipped calls and raged silently at my phone, I relented and agreed to a family reunion at a local cafe. The first meeting was tense, stilted smiles, awkward hugs, but by the end, there were tears and apologies. Believing them sincere, I invited them to my home for dinner a few weeks later. I thought I was closing a painful chapter. Instead, I unknowingly invited a new betrayal. At first, it felt like a normal family gathering. My brother hung pictures and fixed a leaky faucet, while my wife baked her famous banana bread for dessert. They laughed together, sharing inside jokes I didn't understand. When my wife announced she was pregnant, I was overjoyed and gushed to friends about soon being a dad. But then I noticed the little things. My brother humming lullabies as he patted her belly, brushing imaginary lint off her blouse at family events, whispering his own name when talking to her stomach. My wife brushed off my concerns. "He's just being helpful," she said. But I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. By month 6, my anxiety reached a fever pitch. One afternoon, while my wife napped, I slipped into her study and grabbed her phone. My heart raced as I opened the messages from my brother. Affectionate nicknames, love declarations, and plans to tell him after the baby's born so he'll still pay child support. I sank to the floor, shaking. That night, I confronted her. She wept and denied it at first, blaming the stress of pregnancy. But eventually her walls crumbled and she admitted the truth. She was in love with my brother, and the baby was his. The silence that followed her admission echoed through the room. Expecting my parents to rally around me, I called them right away. Instead, they accused me of overreacting and told me I was being paranoid. They sided with my wife and my brother. The next morning, my ex announced our divorce and her engagement to my brother on social media, posting ultrasound photos with the caption, "Best surprise ever." I scrolled through the comments, my family flooding them with congratulations, while I sat there feeling utterly alone. Friends unfollowed me online, colleagues avoided me at work, and I realized that everyone I cared about had chosen them over me. The legal fallout was brutal. My ex-wife's attorney labeled me controlling, claiming I forced her to quit her job and isolated her from friends. Those lies stuck because my parents backed her story, saying I'd always had a bad temper and a misogynistic streak. In court, I heard the gavel fall and felt my world shatter all over again. The judge awarded her a significant settlement, custody of the baby, and even my car. All I managed to keep was the house. In a single afternoon, I lost my savings, my marriage, and my dream of being a father. Recovery has been a long, lonely road. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects just to stay busy. I joined a gym to release some of the anger and started therapy to unpack years of buried resentment. I also began volunteering at a local animal shelter and joined a monthly book club to push myself out of isolation. A few friends have checked in, but mostly I've kept to myself. I rebuilt my life one routine at a time. Quiet mornings sipping coffee, completing to-do lists, and indulging in small pleasures like a funny movie or a long run. Then, 2 weeks ago, something finally shifted. I woke up feeling lighter, like I had suddenly exhaled after holding my breath for years. I realized that happiness isn't something that happens to you. It's something you build. So now, I'm writing my own story. I'm cautious about who I let into my life, but I'm ready to trust again. I'm even thinking about dipping my toes back into the dating pool when the time feels right. The darkest chapter of my life is over, and I'm determined to make the next one better. I just landed a promotion, better title, fatter paycheck, the works, and I couldn't have been more thrilled. To celebrate, I treated myself to a solo dinner at one of my favorite spots. Bad move sharing it online. Within 48 hours, my mom was blowing up my phone, insisting I come see the family. After the divorce, we hadn't spoken, not once, especially after they sided with my ex and her lies. I stalled for a few days, then she started calling nonstop, even showed up at my office, refused to leave, and nearly came to blows with the receptionist. Mortifying. Finally, I promised a visit in a few days, just to get her out of my hair. When I showed up at their new house, bigger, fancier, thanks to the settlement money, they welcomed me in. Baby had arrived about 3 weeks earlier. I guess the alimony was shouldering bills, but it hardly mattered. It was a tiny fraction of my salary, and I could afford it. My brother wasn't around and my ex was asleep upstairs, so it was just mom and dad grilling me. I didn't say a word. Let them make their pitch. After a long, awkward silence, dad dropped the bomb. My brother got fired. The settlement and alimony weren't cutting it, and they'd seen my promotion post. Now they were hoping I could chip in. My parents are long retired, my brother unemployed, my ex clearly not headed back to work, and with a newborn, 5 mouths to feed, they were flat broke. I won't lie, I was stunned. Of all the gall to come begging after everything they'd done. I sat there speechless until I found my voice. None. I stood and walked out without a single word. Outside, rain hammered down. I was soaked by the time I reached my car, already in a foul mood. That's when they charged after me, mom, dad, and even my brother, looking sheepish. As I fumbled for my keys, they made their last-ditch plea. My brother, usually so smug thanks to our parents' clear favorite, actually begged me for help. I lost it. I told them to leave me alone, that if they were desperate they could beg on the street, where some stranger might take pity on them before I would. Then I peeled out of the driveway, leaving them drenched and stunned in the downpour. I won't lie, it felt good. They'd mistreated me my whole life. It's been 2 days since. My phone won't stop buzzing with texts from mom. Guilty? Maybe. I've got more than enough, and sending a little cash wouldn't hurt. But after how they sided with my ex, it feels like I'd just be enabling their entitlement. So I told mom to quit the harassment, or I'd have my lawyers intervene, and it wouldn't end well for them. Surprise. That only made them try harder. A few days later, my brother came to my door. He apologized for the childhood stuff, admitted our parents always favored him, but insisted I was weird for holding a grudge and should just help them instead of acting like a petulant kid. I laughed, told him maybe he should get a job instead of scheming for handouts. He flipped, accusing me of jealousy, saying even my ex preferred him, and threatened to come after me until I paid up. Honestly, I'm not sweating it. He's all bark and no bite. Then came the ex. She rang me up, politely at first, pleading her case. Her family was drowning financially. She knew I didn't owe them anything, but maybe I could show a little compassion. She reminded me how my parents paid for everything when we were kids, and how she'd try to be a good wife, excluding, of course, the part where she cheated on me with my brother. I pointed out I was already pouring money into her alimony, which she didn't deserve, and that she and my family had painted me the villain to squeeze more out of me. She broke down in tears, called me selfish, said my brother was right, and threatened to drag me back to court for higher support. I hung up. Let them try. I'm too drained to fight again. I initially gave in without contesting their allegations and agreed to pay alimony, even though I was never toxic or controlling. She claimed my behavior drove her to cheat, but that was complete nonsense. She had no right to any of my money. At the time, I just wanted the divorce finalized quickly, regardless of the financial fallout. But now I've had a change of heart. I'm ready to fight back, not just for my wallet, but to show my family you can't push me around or expect me to pay for someone else's mistakes. Update 3. In a shocking twist, my ex-wife petitioned for a higher alimony award after learning about my promotion. This time, I refused to let her take advantage. I reached out to our mutual friends. Most of them thought we'd simply separated, unaware of the uglier details. When I filled them in on her betrayal, they were stunned. I asked those willing to testify on my behalf if it went to court, and they agreed immediately. Next, I instructed my lawyer to pursue a full dismissal of any alimony claim, since she wasn't owed a dime. Over the next few days, I gathered evidence showing how my parents and brother treated me like an outsider. They never considered me an equal growing up, and now that I've been promoted, they're shamelessly pestering me for money, calls, texts, even surprise visits. I decided I'd had enough of catering to these freeloaders. I reached out to a few cousins who remember how I was shut out, even though we weren't especially close. To my relief, they agreed to record statements describing firsthand how I was unfairly marginalized by my own family. When I presented this evidence to my attorney, he couldn't believe how airtight our case had become. Everyone already knew my ex had cheated, but her lawyer's spin painted me as the villain and my brother as the hero who rescued her. With our new documentation, video messages from friends and relatives directly refuting their lies, we had everything we needed to flip the script. I hadn't stood up for myself during the first divorce, but now I was determined to set the record straight and clear my name once and for all. I'm pretty sure my ex and my family expected another easy payout, but I've grown stronger through all of this. Nothing breaks me now. Yesterday, the court finalized the settlement. I won't owe her any alimony, thanks to the new evidence that surfaced. I've never been happier. Watching the smug expressions vanish from my family's faces was priceless, and seeing my ex on the verge of tears was just icing on the cake. For once, justice felt incredibly satisfying, and I savored every moment of it. Planning to celebrate, I decided I'd treat myself to takeout and a movie. I was just a few yards from my front door when I saw my brother's car parked outside my house. Confused but undeterred, I walked in, only to find my entire family blocking the entrance. I froze for a second, caught off guard. Then I took a deep breath, acted unfazed, and told them to get off my property, or I'd call the police. They stared at me, disbelief written all over their faces, as they realized I was serious this time. My dad immediately launched into a tirade, saying I should be ashamed for abandoning the people who mattered most. He lectured me about betrayal, responsibility, and how I was turning my back on my family at their moment of need. I stayed silent, refusing to give him the reaction he craved. My mother demanded I treat my father with respect, but I kept staring straight ahead, refusing to engage. I could tell they'd hoped for an argument, but they'd underestimated my resolve. I wasn't falling into their trap. After more yelling, my brother finally snapped. He grabbed me by the collar and swung at me with all his might. Dad intervened just in time, pulling him away. As he ranted, calling me a jealous loser destined to fail, I couldn't help but notice the irony. Here was a 33-year-old unemployed man still living off family handouts, accusing me of jealousy and failure. I shook my head in disbelief and told them one last time to leave, or I'd have the police escort them off my property. They hesitated but eventually backed off, except for one last guilt trip from my mother. She tried to shame me into handing over money. I stood firm, and finally they drove away. It's been nearly 24 hours, and I haven't heard a peep from any of them since. I'm hoping it stays that way. At last, I can enjoy some peace and quiet, free from their demands and manipulation. It feels like a new chapter, one where I'm in control and nobody can take advantage of me. Now, on to story 2. My second wife, 33F, had been having an affair with my stepdaughter's father. I discovered the betrayal in December when I walked in on them at his house. It was a gut punch, there was no denying it. She cheated on me, and I immediately filed for divorce. The pain was intense, but this time I was ready. I wouldn't let her narrative define me or derail my life again. That's where things stand now. I have been kicking him off our property for years and keeping his anger in check. Every morning, I wake up early to clean the bathrooms, vacuum the floors, mow the lawn, and feed the pets, then cook breakfast for her daughter before taking her to school. I handle all the grocery shopping, laundry, dishes, yard work, and basic home repairs for free. The moment we got married, she insisted I donate my beat-up car so I could drive one of hers. To help cover expenses, I even took a part-time job at the law firm where she works. My days began at 6 a.m. and often didn't end until 2 a.m. because there was always one more chore to finish. I tried to forgive her when I first caught her texting him late at night and making secret plans to meet up with other male friends. She kept assuring me she wanted to make things work, yet she emotionally and sexually abused me. She told me her cheating was my fault for not noticing sooner, using guilt trips and threats to force me into sex when I wasn't ready. When I discovered she was pregnant by him and asked for a DNA test, she flew into a rage, scheduled an immediate abortion, and then blamed me for forcing her decision. That was the final straw. I decided to leave last month and quit my job. Since then, I've been crashing on my family's couch, struggling to get out of bed or even feed myself. We were married for less than a year, and I've received zero spousal support. I lost my car, my job, custody of my stepdaughter, and half my family. Her relatives and some of my own turned against me. I have no savings, no approved rental applications, and no stable place to call home. Without my parents and siblings stepping in, I would be completely homeless. My mental health has never been this low. I see a therapist twice a week. I'm on antidepressants, and yet I suffer crippling anxiety, flashbacks, and nightmares that leave me drenched in sweat. Discovering that the cheating began back when we were just dating made it all feel like a twisted game. I journal every night to sort through my thoughts, but sometimes reading those pages makes me break down all over again. My lawyer, whom I trust completely and who's a close family friend, says there's little more he can do right now. I know I need to take baby steps. apply for new jobs, rebuild my credit, and find a safe place to live. I've updated my resume, submitted more than 30 applications, and enrolled in free online marketing courses to learn new skills. But right now, even leaving the house feels impossible. Socializing with friends drains me. I end up in tears before dinner is over and often cancel plans at the last minute because my anxiety spikes. Driving home, I'm consumed by self-doubt and sorrow, wondering if I'll ever feel normal again. Update: a close friend told me my ex-wife plans to bring the affair partner, AP, to our divorce hearing as a final, vindictive move. Some friends have offered to testify about her pattern of infidelity. Others say I should ignore any stunt and focus on my recovery. I'm also debating whether to file for a temporary restraining order, but I worry it will only provoke more drama. Update number 2. The divorce hearing was today. The courtroom was packed. I sat across from her, she beside her attorney, glaring at me as the judge asked routine questions. The hearing lasted less than an hour, and the judge granted her sole custody of my stepdaughter since AP didn't appear. We signed the final papers, and she tried to hand me mail addressed to my old address. I refused to make eye contact. I focused on each signature and each stamp, symbols of my freedom. Afterward, I went to the gym and crushed 4 new personal records on bench presses and squats. I channeled my anger into the heaviest weights I've ever lifted. Those gym sessions have become my therapy: heavy deadlifts, long cardio runs, and deep breaths afterward in the locker room. Later, I moved out of town, changed my phone number, and opened a P.O. box so she and her contacts can't find me. She still doesn't know where I live or where I work now. I've started a new job at a small marketing agency, and though the pay is modest, it feels good to contribute again. Discovering AP wouldn't be at court made sense once I learned he got someone else pregnant. That revelation felt like the last insult in a long string of betrayals. I noticed a note mixed in with the mail she handed me in court, tore it into pieces, and tossed it in the trash before she could react. She already had a loving husband and a safe home, yet she chose to cheat with a man who's lazy, abusive, and unreliable. He used to beat my ex-wife when they lived together. He drops their daughter off with his mother at every chance, and that little girl calls me dad because she hardly knows her biological father and feels more secure with me. His own mother cried on Christmas when I spent the afternoon with them. She was so grateful her granddaughter had at least one stable parent in her life. That image will stay with me forever. Now AP is expecting another baby, and all I can hope is that the mother escapes him quickly for that child's sake. I wrote down every way I was wronged in a notebook and then ripped out those pages as a symbolic gesture. Watching them flutter into the trash felt strangely cathartic. I blocked her on social media, deleted old photos, and erased our text threads. Despite my progress, therapy sessions, weightlifting milestones, a new job, and rebuilding my support network, I still feel alone. I swing between moments of real hope and crushing numbness. I thought finalizing the divorce would bring relief, but if I'm honest, I wish none of us had endured this pain. Even now, weeks after the court date, I sometimes wake up in a cold sweat, thinking I'm still trapped in that life. My therapist tells me that recovery isn't linear, that some days I'll feel like I'm finally free, and others like I'm starting from scratch. That advice helps, but there are moments when I still hear her voice in my head, repeating those same manipulative phrases. You made me do this. You're the reason I'm unhappy. If you leave, you'll ruin everything. I know now that those words were never true. They were weapons, carefully chosen to keep me stuck. And for a while, they worked. I stayed far longer than I should have, hoping love could fix what was broken. But love without respect is just pain in disguise. I've started to reclaim pieces of myself. I reconnected with a few old friends, ones I drifted from during the marriage. We met for coffee a few times, and I admitted everything. To my surprise, they didn't look at me with pity. They were angry for me, protective, encouraging. They reminded me that I used to laugh more, smile wider, and dream bigger, that I was never meant to be a ghost in my own life. At home, I've started a few routines that help keep me grounded. I write down 3 small wins every night. Sometimes it's just that I showered or went for a walk, but they count. I cook again, just for myself. Nothing fancy, but it feels good to make meals that don't revolve around someone else's preferences. I even adopted a dog from the shelter. Her name's Penny. She's a scruffy little mutt with big eyes and a louder bark than her size suggests. She curls up beside me when I'm having a bad day, and somehow, that quiet companionship is more healing than any medication. The job at the marketing agency is still new, but I'm learning quickly. I've taken on a few freelance gigs on the side too, writing ad copy, managing social media accounts for small businesses. It's not glamorous, but it's something. It gives me purpose. I'm saving up for a car again, and maybe, in a few months, I'll be able to rent a place of my own. I still think about my stepdaughter. Every night, actually. Her laugh, her bedtime stories, the way she'd fall asleep in the back seat after school. I don't know if I'll ever see her again. That's the part that breaks me the most. She didn't choose any of this, and now she's growing up around chaos. I hope, someday, she understands that I didn't abandon her. I just had to survive. People tell me I'm strong for walking away. I don't feel strong. I feel like someone who got knocked down and stayed on the ground too long. But I'm starting to get up now. one shaky step at a time. I've even thought about dating again. Nothing serious, but just opening my heart a little. I know I'm not ready yet, but I like that the thought doesn't scare me anymore. There are still bad days. Sometimes the silence of my apartment is deafening. Sometimes I see couples in public, and it stings more than I expect. And sometimes, I catch myself wondering what could have been if she had just loved me back in the way I loved her. But then I remind myself, she didn't. And that wasn't my fault. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to live with the memory without letting it control you. I'm learning to do that. Slowly. I'm building a life that belongs to me again. And for the first time in what feels like forever, I believe that life can be a good one. If you're reading this and you've been through something similar, I want you to know it gets better. Not right away. Not easily. But it does. You're not alone, and you're not weak for hurting. What happened to you wasn't your fault. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. One day, you'll wake up and realize the storm has passed. The air will feel different, lighter, and you'll finally be able to breathe. I'm not quite there yet, but I can feel it coming.